Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I hope and trust that you are all well. Before I get started, I would like to give a very special shout out to the reformed members of Back to Ashes: Tavia S., Chrissy Ellis, Tina Mead, Cindy Cleveland, Patty's niece, Samantha Place, and Inner Scare Wifey. The rest of the membership family will be right here on your screen. If you would like to become a member of Back to Ashes, and you would also like to support a content creator, you can buy me a coffee. All of that information will be found in the description below. Now, with all of that being said, it is time to go back to ashes. For when we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and happier person in the morning. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack, or tuck in to get warm, and enjoy this dose of vocal melatonin entitled Attic and Basement Horror Stories. Right after this intro, an ad will play. I'll read the first story, an ad will play, and after that, there will be no more ads within this video. I used to live in the upstairs apartment at my uncle's. The front door to the apartment was right next to a door that led to the attic. My door also only had a handle lock. One night, something woke me up at around 3:30. I realized it sounded like footsteps. I figured it was an animal and passed back out. The next night, the same thing happens but louder. Then sounds like someone is stomping down the attic stairs and pounds on my front door. I have never been so terrified in my life. Called my buddy until he answered and stayed there for the next few nights. My room is in the basement, and I have a fire escape window that leads outside. I had the windows open one night because it was really hot, and it blew open the curtains for a brief second. And I swear to God that an old man was staring me in the eyes while grinning. I opened the curtains immediately and nothing was there. This was around 1 a.m. though, so I totally could have imagined it. But after that, I just went and played Far Cry until morning. No way was I going to be able to sleep after that. I work in real estate and was visiting a large block of land that a developer was going to develop 40 townhomes on. We're walking around chatting about what will go where, etc. And I ask him if he's demolishing the house on the front corner of the lot. He then got super excited and took us up to visit it. We walk in. First thing we see is shaggy yellow carpet, not only in every room of the house, but also on the walls and the ceiling. We walk around the kitchen with a bar and a pool table in the center of it, and then see an old 1960s looking fridge in the dining room. Didn't think anything of it, considering how weird the place was already. But the developer opened the fridge door, and it was a secret staircase going down to an underground basement. The basement had the craziest sound system and disco balls and a freaking stage. There was a large canvas painting down there too, and the developer took it off the wall, and there was an escape tunnel out to the back of the block. Apparently, the past owner was a super successful lawyer back in the 1970s who took on a lot of drug cases. I had what appeared to be a demon in a top hat with stringy long hair and pointed teeth stare me directly in the face 1 foot away from me when I was 17, with a group of friends in an abandoned warehouse basement at 3 a.m., and caught it on camera in photos that kept deleting themselves and reappearing on my laptop. Needless to say, I never returned there, and almost burnt the whole freaking building down. It said that a bunch of people got stuck in the basement when the building caught fire in the early 1900s, and they all died before they could get the fire put out. I don't know about those details. I just know what I saw with my own eyes, and the face is permanently burned into my brain. I'm not religious, but I think I saw a legit demon stare me down that day. I don't play with the dead anymore. So my daughter wanted to have a sleepover for her 10th birthday party. Cool. They all set up downstairs, and towards the end of the night, they were watching a movie. Around midnight, I was getting tired, so I got up, checked on them, and they were all sleeping. I went upstairs to my room, where my wife was already sleeping. My door was open to the hallway. I started to get undressed, and I watched a girl with long dark hair walk from my daughter's room down the hall right past my door. I was kinda surprised, considering I just saw all of them sleeping just a minute before. So I stepped into the hallway and nobody was there. I checked the bathroom, nobody was there. I continued through the house, finding nobody upstairs. I thought I saw someone by the stairs, so I asked, "Did you need something?" No reply. I walked downstairs to see that all the kids were still sleeping. Dumbfounded, I got a super weird feeling. Not scared, but disbelief that this just happened. Did I just follow a ghost into my basement? Never saw anything else in the house, but I started looking for a new house regardless. I was about 16 and I came home from school. Heard some weird noises coming from the walk-in closet. I went to check it out, and my dad was screwing the attic door in the ceiling closed with L brackets and wood screws, as if it was never meant to be opened again. When I asked him what was up, he said he kept hearing sounds of someone walking around up there. My dad is a level-headed guy. I've never seen him show any type of fear about stuff like that. It freaked me out more to see him going to such lengths to prevent the attic from being opened. That or there's some dead hookers up there. We both hope to never find out. So my family and I moved into this house when I was about 12. It's just a tiny house in a suburban-ish area. I shared a room with my younger sister, which was upstairs. One day, we're playing hide and seek and she hides in the closet. She was leaning against the wall in the back of the closet and falls into a hidden door into an attic room. The door was like part of the wall, but cut to where you could push the door open and opened up like a flap instead of a normal door. It was just dark inside and just looked like it would be used as storage space. But if you went in and looked to the right towards the back, there was a smaller door. Like you have to crawl in to fit, but it had locks on the outside. They were all unlocked, thankfully. Inside the tiny room was an air conditioning system, ventilation, a light installed on the ceiling with a light switch. It was also well insulated with plastic covering the walls and a blue tarp on the floor. To the left against the wall were like wooden compartments and shelves. There was also a metal rectangular frame on wheels in the middle of the room. Our parents had no idea the room was there. They basically just let us use it as a playroom or whatever. Since we were kids, we made up all kinds of stories of why the room was there and what it was used for. Realistically, I think the last owners used it for growing weed or something along those lines, but it was still pretty interesting to find. So, the other day I found this upside down cross in the attic in the new apartment we moved into. My mother brought with her a small angel statue that was holding a book with text that read this: "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen." She has had this figure since she was a small child, and yesterday it fell out of her closet, down on the ground, and broke into 1,000,000 pieces, without any of us being close to it or having the windows open. We have also experienced hearing footsteps, and our TV randomly turns up. We have a chow, a breed that in ancient China was used to ward off evil spirits, and he barks at the same time every day at our attic. This could have a logical explanation, but I'm not sure what I should do now. My husband and I work as a team on residential houses. I do the electrical, he does the HVAC. This job was supposed to be an empty house someone had just inherited, and it was in pretty rough shape. It was already getting dark out, and we had had bad vibes about this house. Someone had completely destroyed the electrical leading to the air conditioning unit and pulled the thermostat wires out of the wall, amongst other things. We kept hearing footsteps upstairs, or what would have been the attic. We called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" And no answer, but we could still hear footsteps. I found the attic hatch, and to my surprise, there was a deadbolt lock on it. I slid the lock to the side and opened it and saw nothing. Nope. I slid the lock back in place and we left chalking it up to there probably being a squatter that lives there, and bounced. I keep thinking about the lock though. Why was it there? Was it keeping something in? Or was it keeping something out? Either way, we aren't going back. My friend wanted to renovate their basement, and the first step was replacing their bulkhead stairs. His daughter was probably 3 or 4 years old at the time, and to keep an eye on her, we set her up with some toys in the basement where we were working. As we were cutting the stair treads to size outside, we heard his daughter laughing and talking and assumed she was just playing with her dolls. Around lunchtime, we took a break and went into the basement and asked my friend's daughter what game she was playing. She mentioned that Nana came to visit and she was showing her her dolls. I should mention that my friend's grandmother, who owned the house, passed away a few years before his daughter was born and had never met her. There were still a few boxes of her possessions in the basement that the family had decided not to get rid of. Ghosts or child's imagination, you decide. When I was a kid, my room was in the basement. I was playing by myself when I got a really weird feeling. I looked up and saw my bedroom door swaying open. It's an old basement, so I would have heard it open. My sister and I had a little decoration that was suction cupped to the glass in the door. When I looked up, it was hanging in mid-air. It then dropped to the floor. I flipped out and ran upstairs to tell my mom. I was freaking out and thinking something was chasing me. My mom was very understanding and went back with me to check. Growing up, I knew we were having weird occurrences in the home, particularly the basement, but I didn't really know the extent of it. My mom confessed years later that she used to hear the basement doors open and close when she was the only one home. She eventually kicked whatever it was out. She never had an issue after that. Also, my dad watched the Tabasco bottle move across the dining room table years later. My mom was talking to him at the time. She then said he got a freaked out look on his face. We're still dealing with whatever this is, here and there. But my mom is a tough old bird, and she eventually chases it out. I used to work in a hotel as a security guard. The building was built in 1922, and it had a basement. One night, the front desk clerk, the valet, and I were just hanging out in the lobby, just chatting, when all of a sudden the phone rang. The phone call was coming from the basement where the offices are. At that time, there is supposed to be no one in the basement office. I already locked the doors and made sure that no one was in there. The front desk picked up the phone, heard a weird noise, and got disconnected. It gives me chills to the bone. The valet guy and I went down to make sure that no one was trespassing. The doors are still locked and we didn't see anyone coming out, so we went inside the office. The only thing we found is the phone blinking and looks like someone had picked it up and dropped it. The valet and I looked at each other and seen the cold sweat on our faces. This is one of the creepiest things that has happened to me while working as a graveyard security officer. I lived alone at my dad's place for a few years, between 2008 and 2014, when he moved in momentarily with his then girlfriend. One day, I went back home earlier than usual, around 2 p.m. Was all alone, even confirmed it by reflex to check the parking lot to see no one was there. My dad or his girlfriend would sometimes pass unannounced to get their mail or do some laundry when her condo had plumbing issues. So, I get inside, sit at my computer that's on the first floor, and can hear all of a sudden the clear noise of someone doing the laundry downstairs, with the recognizable sound of the washing machine's door being opened, the wet clothes being thrown in the dryer, the clicking noise of the selection knob, the whole thing. I was already pretty freaking scared, but remembered my dad and his girlfriend shared a car, and maybe he just dropped her off to do some laundry and went running some errands. So I left it at that, chill at the computer, hear all the usual noises of someone finishing folding the dry laundry, pulling off the clean laundry basket, etc., then walking to the stairs of the basement. I remember removing my headphones, stretching my neck sideways to greet my dad's girlfriend. I could hear coming up the stairs. And at that last one, I see nobody. I thought she was messing with me or something. I walked to the staircase. It was completely empty. I went downstairs, walked to the dryer. It was unused and cold. Absolutely nothing there had moved in a few weeks. I remember clearly and vividly having acknowledged that someone else was there. That's how clear and evident all the noise was. I immediately called my dad to ensure what the hell was going on and if he recently came over, and they both were on vacation, 4 hours away, since a week or so ago. I slept upstairs until we sold the house a few years later. So, this totally reminded me about something that happened a few months back. I lived with my now ex-boyfriend and had fallen asleep on the couch in the basement. It is undeveloped, but we had different areas for a movie room, laundry room, and playroom for his young daughter. I had never fallen asleep down there before, but I was exhausted and it was 3 a.m., so I decided to just sleep instead of go up 2 flights of stairs to bed. I was more restless than usual, kept waking up for no apparent reason every few minutes or half hour or so. I was able to tell roughly how long the sleeps were because I'd left the TV on without sound, and I would fall asleep watching one show and wake up watching another. Anyway, I was confused as to why I kept waking up, but was too exhausted to really care, so I just kept falling back asleep. Then, one time I woke up to the sound of a semi-loud bang that had clearly come from somewhere in the basement. I sat up, looked around, and didn't see anything. I thought my boyfriend maybe came downstairs, but it was still and silent. I go back to sleep, and maybe 10 minutes later, I hear it again. Wake up, and immediately, I hear his daughter's rocking emo toy start talking. I don't believe what it said because I was too freaked out and too busy trying to figure out what the hell was going on. But it was about 15 seconds of this freaking toy randomly making noise. I get up, turn on the light, and walk over to it. It's just sitting there staring with its permanently wide-eyed expression staring off. I immediately head to bed and cuddle up to my fast-asleep boyfriend. The next morning, I asked him if he was playing a trick on me or something. He said, "Hell no, I was dead asleep the whole night," which I believe because he was fighting off a cold and had worked late that day. I told him about what happened and the Elmo toy, and he said that it can only make noise when you are on it and rocking it back and forth. He insisted I was on crack, so we went downstairs and tried to get it to make the same noise. Of course, it wouldn't work. We lived alone except when his daughter was there on weekends, and this wasn't a weekend. I was so freaked out, I never went down there unless all the lights were on and it was daytime. He told some of his buddies, and they made fun of me nonstop for a good week. Oh, the Elmo voice jokes were hilarity at its finest to them. It was horrifying for me. Almost 30 years ago, I was spending several months in Western Europe and staying in a former monastery built in the 17th century. Very early on during my stay, I was warned by one of the girls who worked there to stay away from certain areas of the building, or at least not to go there by myself. When I asked why, she said none of them ever went there alone because often they would see black figures staring at them from the end of the hallway. While I have always loved ghost stories, I had never seen one and wasn't too bothered by what she told me. In fact, I actually wanted to go to that area to see if I could catch something. Spoiler alert, I never saw anything there or anywhere else in the building, but that didn't mean nothing happened. I spent several months in there, and it was only after I left that I started to realize something was wrong with that place. Many things happened there, but if I were to tell them all, I would end up with a book. You see, I changed while I was there. I started hearing my name being called constantly by a voice I didn't recognize. Not only that, I couldn't even tell if it was male or female. Nothing else was said, only my name was called. I looked around but couldn't see anyone. Oftentimes, I would hear people playing billiards, and I would head out to where the billiards table was, only to find the room deserted and the balls put away, so nobody could have been playing. As soon as I walked away, I would almost immediately hear the sound of play, which I knew couldn't be, because I had just been there seconds before. Funny thing is that at the time, I didn't think anything of it. Not of my name being called, not of the phantom billiards game. The attic of this building was huge, and it had been turned into a library. There was brand new heating and heavy new insulation installed. I would go there to get away from people and to read. At first, there was nothing unusual, and I could be there for hours with nobody else bothering me. But soon, that would change. I started feeling as if someone were standing behind me, but I looked everywhere and nobody was there. Soon I started hearing strange knocking noises behind me, and the room became so cold that I could see my own breath steaming. I checked the heat and it was fine, but I felt more and more uncomfortable there. I felt unwelcome, but I still went there until one day when I went up the stairs, and even though it was open, I was unable to pass the threshold. There was nothing blocking my way, and yet I couldn't pass no matter how hard I pushed. I tried for about 10 minutes and finally gave up. I never went into the attic again. Weird thing about it is that this was the one place where I never heard my name being called. I could probably write a book with everything else that happened, but this has taken long enough already. The thing is, I never wanted to leave. I left that place 30 years ago, and although I don't hear my name being called, I know it wants me to go back. It just sits there, waiting. My family and I, mom, dad, and sister, moved into this house when I was 6. When we first moved, I hated it here. I was constantly scared, seeing shadows, hearing weird stuff, and once even jumped out of the shower with shampoo all over my head and ran downstairs crying to my mom because I felt and heard something breathe next to my ear. I would have friends over, and when we were left alone in the house, we would also hear things and be scared. Almost the whole home is wood flooring, and we'd hear crackling like somebody was walking around. Throughout this time in our new home, I found out later that my parents were hearing music coming from the attic while they were in bed. Piano music, sometimes radio music. My father is someone who takes no shit, and I've never seen him be scared of anything. So he'd walk up and pull down the stairs to the attic to check it out. As soon as he got to the top, the music would stop. He'd check the entire attic. There was nothing up there that would produce music. My mother told me this years later, as she knew I was afraid enough. So, in my high school years, I would go to bed and lock my door at night. Stupid, I know, but my dad wasn't one to knock, and I was often doing things I shouldn't be doing in there. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night. Mind you, I'm a person you have to shake to wake. To my doorknob being violently shaken in its locked state. Seeing the hour, I jumped out of bed and opened the door immediately, assuming it was Dad and something was wrong. Nobody was there. I go back to sleep thinking I must be dreaming or crazy or something. This happened a total of 2 to 3 times over a fairly large span of years. I've only had knocks on my door in the middle of the night or early morning. My response is usually, "Yeah?" Nobody enters. I open the door and nobody is there. The last isolated incident I can remember was in 2016. I was working at a salon and the owner's daughter, who I became quite close to, died of an overdose. Our birthdays were 3 days apart and we'd always celebrate together at the salon. She had just passed in January and it was her birthday night. It was late, 1, maybe 2 a.m. I was on the toilet in my bathroom and happened to be thinking about her. I said out loud, "Happy birthday, Bonnie." And boom, I start hearing wild piano music above me in the attic. I freaked out and ran downstairs, woke up my mom, who was sleeping on the couch because my parents no longer slept in the same bed. This is when she told me about the music when I was a kid. So, 2 weekends ago, there was nothing good on TV on Sunday. Surprise, surprise. So I put on Unexplained. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a ghost hunting show with qualified people doing the hunting, i.e. paranormal investigators and mediums. I kind of like the thrill of being scared watching stuff, but I don't like being scared in my own home. My mom and I watched for a few hours until I went to pick up food. I took her car because it was easier. There was this water bottle on her back seat swishing around and making noise in the car. I'd been in her car the day before running hours worth of errands and did not notice this at all. I felt a weird presence and sacredness while I drove. I told myself I'm just creeping myself out because of the show. That night I go to bed, all good, not thinking about anything scary. At 9 a.m., I wake up to 4 soft knocks on my bedroom door. I assume it's Mom and I say, "Yeah?" Nothing. I go back to sleep for an hour or two, wake up later and ask her if she knocked on my door this morning. The answer was no. So the very next night I go to sleep. I have this old Harman/Cardin speaker and bass set in my bedroom. It's 4 a.m. and the thing is humming, like loud and creepy. Hum, hum, hum. Each one, the tone sounds like it's more echoey and closer. I quickly turn on my phone's flashlight. It stops immediately. I've grown older in this house, and for a very long time, I stopped feeling scared. Was watching that show and had odd things come back to like the spirit's own way of telling me like they're still there. I don't know. Can you explain what's going on? I'd love to hear your opinion. Hello all. There recently was a thread about what made you believe in ghosts. I will start with the same context many probably have said before, but I was an extremely skeptical individual. I believe that the majority of events that occur can be explained by logical explanations. That was until both myself and wife had our experiences with several unexplainable events. I want to context that these events have changed both my wife and myself views on many things, including paranormal. The events took place around 6 years ago. The wife and I were staying at my father's house after he passed away. Everyone in the family spoke about the house being haunted as long as I can remember. Personally, never had anything weird happen prior to this, and overall, just chalked it up to that side of the family being overzealous and storytellers. We were at the house for around a week to help clean it out, as it was around 6 hours away from where we lived. There were several weird events leading to the final event that changed myself and wife forever. To give better context, the house itself was a postage stamp style Victorian house with 2 floors and a semi-finished apartment style attic. First event. I was going up into the attic to work on cleaning out some stuff my father had up there. He was an avid collector of NASCAR diecast and other collectibles, and things were everywhere. On my way up the steps, I was on the phone with my wife, who had went to get food, when I saw the handle of the attic door twist and the door slightly opened. This area we were in was not necessarily dangerous, but was far from nice. I instantly thought someone had broken in and immediately ran up to investigate. I searched everywhere and could not find anyone. In retrospect, it was idiotic to go up there alone, as if someone was up there. I was not prepared to handle it. Grief makes emotions just dull, including fear. Second event. The wife, myself, and a childhood friend were in the attic cleaning out items. In the attic, there was thick old shag carpet that had been there from the 70s. Since it was a semi-finished attic, one room was for storage and is where my buddy was working. I look at my wife, who was literally just pointing at the door. We both watched the door for that room close slowly on my buddy. There was zero reasoning or explanation, as we both saw it, and the door itself took a large amount of force to actually close. Obviously, my buddy was pretty unhappy, and we both just said, "Sorry, forgot you were in there," to avoid him thinking both of us were losing our minds or scaring him. Last event. The last night we ever stayed there, we slept on the second floor in the master bedroom. The bedroom itself was positioned so the headrest of the bed's wall was aligned with a set of stairs coming up. The wall and stairs were about 3 to 15 feet difference in height, depending on the location, an important piece to what ended up happening. Throughout the night, my wife kept waking me up to say someone was walking around on the platform landing outside. I looked and did see what looked like a shadow under the doorframe, so I immediately opened the door and braced for what I assumed was an intruder. Again, nothing was there, even after searching the house extensively. Later that night, I am awoken to sounds of scratching in the wall behind my head. My wife is awake already and looking at me oddly and terrified, as she hears it too. I assume it is a rat or some type of animal. While weird, it was directly behind me. Would not be a far-fetched possibility, as the house did have critters in it. In a tired rage, I turned around and just punched the wall to scare it off. Within a second, something punches back on the wall. With such force, it shakes the entire thing. We both then hear footsteps stomping and running away from us and up the attic stairs. At this moment, we are both at a loss for words and immediately pack up with our son and leave. We call the police and just assume it has to be someone who broke in, until the next day when we started to think about it. The area where the scratching was occurring was above the steps. A good 10 feet, and even an extremely tall man would have had trouble reaching with a ladder. However, even if they could reach, what we couldn't explain is how this thing ran on a floor that literally did not exist. The sound of running was not going up steps, but as if there was a hallway and floor directly behind the wall, which there was not. The police found no signs of a break-in or of any intruder being there. The security cameras, ring system, outside never had any alerts or saw anyone coming in. We ended up selling the house as is with everything in it and never stayed over there again. I came down briefly a few weeks later to finish up some final business and just went to tell my father goodbye at the house. Upon entering, the house just felt so hateful. I don't understand how a house could have feelings, but if someone were to ask me what it felt like, hateful is the word I would use. I have no idea to this date what any of it means. To clarify, had I not been in such a state of grief, I would have never investigated nor stayed after the first event. My dad always brushed off the other family members, claims it to be haunted as no big deal, and even in my childhood years visiting, I never once had an odd experience. My dad and I had a really good relationship throughout his life, and he never talked about the house in a negative light. The house was built in 1879 by a French family, and after them, my family owned it from 1952 and so on. Nothing traumatic ever happened there, nor any weird family events. It was just a plain old boring house prior to that week. How has everyone else coped with a truly unexplainable event? My wife and I still to this day cannot even talk about it without getting chills or feeling literally insane. A couple years back, I was sitting in my living room and I felt a really cold chill just slowly roll down my shoulders and back, and then seconds later feeling pressure on my right shoulder, like someone had just put their hand on there. I freaked out and ran to the kitchen, but as soon as I got near the table, my body just completely froze. Like unable to move, frozen. I felt the hand come back, but this time it was wrapped around my neck and I was struggling to breathe. I felt like I was there for ages, but in reality, it was probably only about 30 seconds, just spluttering and trying to get a breath in. Once it went away, I ran straight up to my mom and stayed under the covers on my bed. I was still up at around 3:30 a.m., just freaked out by what happened earlier in the day. I had planned on trying to get some sleep, but as soon as I put my head down on the pillow, something crashed in the attic above my room. It was so loud, the impact made my bed shake a little. Once again, that cold feeling came back, and I could feel my body tensing up, but not freezing like before, just scared shitless. I kept listening to see if I could hear a person or something up there, but nothing happened. I saw the time on the clock was 3:43 a.m. at this point, and decided to make note of it. A little over 10 minutes later, I heard creaking from above my head, like slow but heavy footsteps, once again in the attic. Then a small thud, followed by a scraping sound, like a box being dragged across the floor. I covered my ears with my duvet at this point, just wanting it to be over so I could get some rest and forget about it all. These thuds and scrapes kept happening, just over and over again, like someone was rearranging the things up there. I wondered if I was asleep, so I sent a text to my sister, knowing that if I woke up and it was still there, then I'd know I wasn't asleep. After about 20 minutes of the noises, they just stopped. I managed to fall asleep pretty quickly, probably because of the events that occurred. The next morning, I woke up to a text chime on my phone from my sister. It was a reply to the message I sent to her earlier. I didn't bother responding as I was too busy thinking about what had happened. I looked over at the clock to see what time it was, only to see that it was frozen at 3:43 a.m. It hadn't changed. I knew it was well into morning based off of the light, so how did it still read 3:43 a.m.? I was still getting a little creeped out, as I know that 3 a.m. is known for being a time of demonic activity, but I didn't want to jump straight to that conclusion. My sister came into my room a little over 10 minutes later and asked if I had any batteries, as her clock had stopped in the night too. I was starting to panic now, and asked her what time it stopped at. She said it was at 3:43 a.m. I checked the text I'd sent her, and you guessed it, 3:43 a.m. It was impossible that I'd sent it at that time, as I know it had been at least 20 minutes, if not more, between me checking the clock and texting her. I got straight out of my bed and decided to check the attic. She saw me pulling down the ladder and asked what I was doing. I gave her a quick rundown of what had happened, the time, the text, and the noises I'd heard. She's not superstitious, but even she was freaked out. So, up in the attic I went. I got to the top of the ladder, switched on the light, and just froze. Not a single thing was out of place. Everything was exactly where it was meant to be. These kind of events have happened multiple times now. Every time my clock and my sister's stop at 3:43 a.m. I came to realize after this happened about 2 or 3 times that this only happened when I myself was up at 3:43 a.m. My sister and I have experimented with it to see if it happens when my sister is up, but it only happens if it's just me. I was and still am completely stumped as to what is going on. I think I may have annoyed some kind of entity in the house. So yeah, pretty spooky and unexplainable if you ask me. What I just experienced is gonna be hard for me to overlook. I'm not trying to be rational no more. You guys win. Ghosts are real. Twice now, I've had a weird experience in the same place, my grandma's attic, only a couple of years ago, and just 5 minutes ago the second time. Let me start with the prequel. To give you an idea, My grandma has a house, and the attic is basically like a second floor over the entire house. It's filled with all sorts of things we dump up there that we don't need. Tools, firewood, old toys from childhoods, etc. Also up there is a short chair and a coffee table. When I take them out of the attic to the balcony, it's my favorite place to smoke in the house. Tobacco, not weed. I like the view and the wind. Sometimes, though, I'm too lazy to bring them out and smoke in the attic, looking around at all the junk. One day I was going to go up there, when as soon as I stepped foot on the first stair, I got a fight or flight response for seemingly no reason. It was the middle of the day. I've been in the attic 1,000 times. I'm not scared of it. I'm not a kid. But for some reason, I was getting chills that my heart was beating fast. As soon as I went up the last step, I stopped and looked around the attic. I had nothing to be afraid of, but it's just instinct. I couldn't go into the attic without checking it out first. I spent like 30 seconds just looking into the attic in silence before the courage came back to me to walk forward. While walking towards the table for some reason, I had the thought, what if a demon's watching me right now and that's why I have a bad feeling? I instantly laughed it off and thought to myself, let him show himself. I'll show him who's boss. And as soon as I finished that thought, I heard a loud shuffle, like someone's footstep dragged out on the ground. I instantly froze midway and just looked in the direction where that came from. I spent at least a minute just looking, frozen, expecting a big-ass rat or something to pop out from somewhere over there. When I finally got my courage back again, as soon as I was about to continue to the table and finally do what I came for, another loud noise froze me. This time, a distorted piano played. I shit you not, the most demonic, out-of-tune chord you can imagine. Like a sound a horror movie producer would put on a jump scare. On cue, I of course immediately dashed towards the stairs and noped the hell out of there. I went downstairs, entered the room my family was in, and tried my best to pretend I wasn't just running from a demon. My mother heard the piano. She thought I found my childhood toys and was fooling around with them. I went with that story and told her that, surprisingly, the batteries were still holding out. They must be good. I wasn't about to tell my family I seriously thought there's a demon in the attic. After I spent a couple of minutes downstairs, regaining my composure, I started to think about things rationally again. I felt ashamed that I got scared of nothing. I'm an adult, damn it. I picked up my small balls and went up there again, determined to find that piano and ease my mind forever. Went up, immediately walked up to the place where the sound came from, and picked up off the wall a big garbage bag filled with toys from my childhood. I started taking things out and found it. A cheap Chinese dingy toy piano. Tried pressing the keys. No sound. Flipped it around, opened the battery compartment, and had a brain fart when I saw there are no batteries in the thing. Took it down with me, found some batteries, and put them in. Tried playing it, still no sound. Unfortunately, I failed to ease my mind. So, over the next couple of weeks, I spent quite some time thinking of that incident. As time went on, I started rationalizing it more and more, thinking that maybe pianos like that make their final sound when their circuit board finally dies. Kind of like parting words. Maybe the shuffle I heard was from my own feet, but because of the fear it sounded like it was someone else's. The only thing that I couldn't make sense of was how the piano that has been in that garbage bag for 15 years found energy without batteries to make a sound out of its speakers, and a loud one at that. I even posted here at one point, hoping someone could ease my mind and offer an explanation. In the end, as time went on, I brushed it off, told myself I'm no engineer. I don't know how currents work and shit. There could be some weird way that what happened was normal and it was just a coincidence. I went to the attic countless times after that and nothing ever happened. No weird sounds, no unexplained paranoia, just peace and quiet, as it should be. Well, right until today. Recently, we've been doing construction work on the house every weekend. I go up to the attic 20 times a day to fetch something or to have a smoke break. We finished the work and went to bed. Now, before you accuse me of being a skeptic rationalizer, please try to keep an open mind. Recently, I've been getting into trying out astral projection. It's a nice little meditation. I haven't succeeded yet, but the effects are quite trippy and it's fun. So, I'm laying in bed, browsing the AP subreddit, before I decided I'm gonna go up there to smoke one last cigarette before I go to sleep. The front door is loud and I don't smoke in the house, so in the attic I go. In the exact same way, as soon as I step foot on the first stair, I get this immense feeling of something is amiss. Now, some years have passed since the last time this happened, and naturally, my small balls have grown at least a little bit. So I didn't stop this time, just went up and sat on my smoke table. I lit my cigarette, remembering the last time this happened in the piano. Like any sane person, I started a monologue in my head to banish the potential ghosts. My monologue continued until my cigarette went out. Here's a recreation. I don't know if there's demons up here or whatnot, but you can't spook my ass. I can't touch you right now, but I'm learning this technique that lets me come into your house. Trust me, tonight I'm coming and killing your dumbass as revenge for when you scared me, etc., etc. Now is your last chance to try to scare me away. Try me, asswipe. And I put my cigarette out, quite amused of my little monologue. And here we go again. As soon as I finished my monologue and said try me, a loud sound as something on my left drags across the floor. This time I caught it with my peripheral. As I turned around, a sack filled with dry sticks for the fireplace was moving across the floor, defying the laws of physics. Gravity cannot do that. Can't make it move that distance, especially when there's so much friction that it made a loud sound. It's also not heavy, it weighs like a couple 100 grams, so it can't slide like that or even cause the friction, unless someone's pushing it from the top. I shot up and stayed fixated on the sack, convinced not to let a rat, for example, run away without me seeing it. It didn't move for a couple of seconds, so I went up to it, took all the sticks out, checked every corner of that thing. No rats inside. I put the sticks back in and said out loud, "Do not touch that again." I said my piece already and I meant it. If there was really an evil entity up there, I'm gonna banish it. Although at that point I was starting to feel like I'm bluffing. I walked up to the stairs, but before I went down, I stopped and looked back at the attic. Although my knees are weak, arms are heavy, bombing on my sweater already, I wasn't going to give in to my fear, so I stared into the void for a couple of seconds to establish my dominance. And again, as if a reply, the sack lightly got dragged, though this time just a little bit, for a split second. I spent a couple more seconds looking at it, and then slowly went down the stairs with a confident walk, shaking a little. Originally, I was going to go to bed, but adrenaline got a little high, so now I'm sitting on the toilet, writing this story, maybe with a ghost proofreading over my shoulder. Sorry to make this long. I tried my best to write it in an entertaining manner. This seemingly uneventful experience I found was just too powerful. I don't think I can ever rationalize this. It's just too many things on top of each other. The strong fight or flight I get before the event. The timing that makes this feel like a reply. the hard-to-explain sound and movement. I know there aren't a lot of skeptics browsing this sub, but still I'd appreciate some guesses as to what could have happened. I am now a believer and cannot over-rationalize things by myself anymore. I don't know if this spirit could be good or bad, so I won't take any extra measures right now, so please don't reply with "throw salt on it" or anything like that. Unless I wake up with a cigarette burn on my cheek and come asking for help with how to banish a demon. I'm gonna go upstairs again in a second to smoke one more cigarette and fill out the vibe. We'll make an edit if something happens, and I might spend some more time with monologues up there tomorrow. Whatever's haunting this attic, I'm coming after you. You won't be living here long, so get your bags ready. Here I am, 12 years after the events of Longford Drive, having nightmares again, and this time I need someone to believe me. I am 28 now. No one believes 15 and 16-year-olds after all. Overdramatic, attention-seeking. Leftover childhood over imagination. Mental illness? Have we taken her to a doctor? Yes. He said it's just the teenage hormones. That's it. This time I need someone to believe me. I was born in Fitzroy, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, in 1992. My brother was born in the same place in 1997. In 2001, before the towers in New York City fell, my family moved to the US. A few months later, the towers fell. No more house, so we moved to Texas. For almost 7 years, we could not buy a house. We had to rent. One night, in one of the rental homes, my brother woke me, horrified. "There are red eyes in the corner of my room." "No, there is not. You are having a nightmare. Leave me alone." I don't remember him leaving, but the morning came and he was no longer in my room. I started to notice he would not travel to certain parts of the rental house, and I just ignored him. For years, he never mentioned the red eyes in the corner of his room again. We moved around a lot after that, and finally we were able to buy our own home, Longford Drive. It was an older home in the area, early 1980s. The surrounding homes were 2000s range and actually had vinyl flooring instead of old, scratched-up flooring that was light, ugly brown, that looked like something out of the 1970s. I used to study every scratch and scrape on the floor and would wonder, what happened there? Movers, children, dogs, or something else? Regardless of the home's obvious bland and aged interior, it was at least our home. It was an early cookie-cutter house, though, you could tell. Every main room was on the first floor, and the second floor was a dominated media room with slanted ceilings for the roof and a huge walk-in attic. The attic was practically its own room, which I suppose my parents liked at the time due to their endless 80s furniture from Australia that, for some reason, they refused to part with. The most disgusting of all, this furniture was a couch with fishes on it. A navy and yellow couch with a very detailed fish on it that were a variety of colors. I don't recall when they finally got rid of it, but I'm glad they did. I'm glad they got rid of a lot of things when we left that house. It took a few years, about 5 to be exact, to truly realize something was not right. And it all started the night before sophomore year in high school. My best friend Chelsea and I practically grew up in that town. We had heard of the legends, laughed about them with our friends and boyfriends. But I guess that night we got brave. So we went to the local graveyard that was at least 200 years old and decided to wander around it and take pictures on an old digital camera. New camera at that point in time. My friend Chelsea had claimed in the past that she could see spirits. To this day, I'm still not sure if I believe in that shit. even after what happened. Logic is a bitch. I'm laughing about something, stumbling through the graveyard like a disrespectful shit teenager. We have all been there, right? Remember when you knew about death, but still didn't process that it could happen to you? Sometimes I'm still like that. Tell me, does it disappear with age? Chelsea stops laughing. I look back at her because the silence stuns me. She is white. She's a white Jewish girl, but she was unnaturally white at this moment. Her brown eyes looked black and they were very big. We need to leave. What? She speaks, angry. We need to leave, now. I feel something almost consume me. Just absolute dread and fear. Beyond fear. All in me. There is no fight or flight. It is like it's broken. We just stare at each other, like we were going to let whatever is about to happen, happen. Like we won't go home tonight and we accept it. Chelsea breaks. I watch her, throwing up her feet as her figure gets further from me and more towards my little red Mustang on the horizon. I don't know how. I don't remember, to be honest, but I ended up following her somehow and suddenly was grabbing the door handle of my Mustang. Then I was inside. The feeling had at least faded. What did you see? Nothing. But I felt, let's go. I don't want to talk about it. Where's the camera? I handed her the camera and she flipped through the pictures I had taken. They were unusually blurry, and as she scrolled, I saw more and more bubble-looking things. Dust. That's what I immediately thought. I knew nothing back then, I suppose. She stared intensely at some specific ones. Then a look of rage washed over her face. She began deleting every picture, furiously, and in that moment, I thought only one thing. What a drama queen. I dropped Chelsea at home. She said very little. I told her I would see her tomorrow at school. She turned and said, "Make sure you remove the SD card from the camera before you get home. Make sure all the photos are deleted." I ignored her and rolled my eyes after she had shut the door and turned away. I went home, laid out my first day of school clothes, and slept better than I had slept in a long time. I think I slept better back then, honestly. Now I'm a serious insomniac with overactive REM cycles. My brother's room was right next to mine at Longford. We slept with our doors open. I'm not sure why. I think it was a childhood habit that I never would participate in today. I don't think he does either. I woke at 6:15 a.m. that morning to his pancake face wailing over me. To this day, I have never in my life seen him so frightened. He was screaming, and my memory tells me, crying, wailing. "Someone came into your room." "What?" "Someone is in your room. Get up." He dragged me out of bed and ran to the door, still clinging to me. I was more awake now and threw on the light. I saw nothing except my tacky lilac room. He ran to the closet and flung the door open. Nothing but my gross mid-2000s clothes. He ran to the bathroom, threw the door open, threw the shower curtain back. Nothing. I looked at him, eyebrows raised and almost laughing at him. His face turned paler. I woke up and there was a light in the hallway and I saw a man. He was older, had a long beard, overalls, and he was floating. He walked into your room. I saw it. It was not a dream. Don't look at me like that. I saw him. He began to tear up with frustration. My parents had noticed the sound at this point and came in. He told them what happened. The first exchange between these adults. He is on ADD medication. He's been having nightmares on this one. We should probably switch him. Yes, but what if you saw Jesus? My mother had noticed his face before stating this. It was a face of disbelief, frustration, anger, and horror. I'm sorry, brother. I didn't believe you either. My mind had already begun to favor the adult side of things. Too scared to admit there is sometimes things we don't understand. Too arrogant and egotistical. I'm sorry. He moved out of that room soon after. He moved into the guest bedroom, and the guest bedroom furniture moved into his old room. I was now alone on that side of the house, which I enjoyed for a time. I rearranged my bedroom furniture as I wanted to participate in a change as well. One night, not long after, I woke up from the sound of footsteps in the hall. It was a small hall that only led to the now guest bedroom and my room. I figured it was my dad checking on me. My older brother had passed away when I was a baby, and my father never truly recovered. He would often come check on us while we slept. He always just wanted to make sure we were still breathing, I guess. We were 3 of 4 children left. My older sister was married and lived far away, so we were always the babies that were left. Step, step, step. It was familiar, so I rolled over and got more comfortable, preparing to fall back to sleep. Step, step, step. I finally opened my eyes and checked out my door to look into the hallway. Nothing. Only the dim nightlight was staring back at me. Okay. He's walked around the kitchen for his late-night glass of milk. I leaned to the right to peer past the hallway. The kitchen light was off. Step, step, step. I was half awake and confused. I closed my eyes and listened hard. Where the hell is that coming from? My eyes burst open as I realized. I slowly followed my lilac wall to my ceiling, which was unpainted. I froze and stared in disbelief. It was coming from the attic. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I felt something was so wrong, and I had to stay awake in case it decided it wanted to consume me. Something was there with me. A week later, my parents explained about squirrels in the attic, and I suddenly was sleeping very well again. Then, I heard the same steps again. Even after the exterminator said the holes were patched and the squirrels were gone. Step, step, step. No sleep. The next day, I went to the attic to figure the shit out for myself. I opened the attic door and walked up the stairs. I studied where my room would be under this attic, and I found it. I walked over as far as I could go and suddenly saw nothing but insulation was covering the entirety of where my room would be. That night was the first time I ever slept with my door closed, and it has not changed since. Step, 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 step. Sometimes the footsteps sounded rushed, sometimes angry, sometimes sad, but they wouldn't come every night. Chelsea stopped sleeping over. I complained to my parents about the squirrel noises every now and again, but the exterminator never found anything. No traces of anything. Rats, bugs, squirrels, nothing. My parents didn't believe me, and my brother would almost ignore me when I mentioned it. He didn't want to hear it. Months went by and I finally was able to convince Chelsea to come over for a minute and watch some TV. As she entered the house, we were gossiping about someone from school. We laughed in the hallway, and then it happened again. She stopped, and this time she fixed her eyes on the stairs leading to the media room. The stairs were a zigzag stairs, so the stairs would go up. Then it would be a flat landing. Then the stairs would go up the opposite direction. And then there would be the media room. On the wall after the first set of stairs was a painting my mother had painted of a thunderstorm. Chelsea parted her lips and said in a whisper, "There is someone standing at the top of your stairs. I can see them in the painting's reflection." She left. I told my father that I suspected someone was up in the media room. He searched everywhere up there. Nothing. I told him that Chelsea must have seen some shadows then. Another few months went by and I stopped going up to the media room. I used to secretly watch Family Guy up there when my parents were gone to work, but something was just wrong. It felt wrong being up there. Halloween came around and my brother and I were instructed to pull everything out of the attic. My brother ditched me halfway there and I was pissed. I angrily started grabbing the boxes and I was verbally venting to myself about his lazy nature. I started down the steps of the attic and slowly started to lose my grip on one of the boxes. I paused to adjust, still livid. Then, psst, psst. A shot of air was blown from behind my head, right next to my ear. I watched as a few strands of my hair reacted to the shot of air and flew out in front of my face on my left side, like someone had intentionally snuck up behind me and blew air at the back of my ear in an attempt to scare me. Except I was the only person here. I was venting about it after all. I knew where my brother was. He was downstairs playing Call of Duty with his stupid friends. Dad was in his room watching Judge Judy, his favorite, and Mom was on a 3-day trip. She was a flight attendant. She was in Seattle, 6 states away. I watched my hair fall back down to the side of my face. I dropped the boxes and let out a scream I don't think I have yet to top. 12 years later, and I have never screamed like that again. I jumped and leaped down the remainder of the stairs and fell out of the attic door into the media room. My brother was already halfway up the stairs thinking something horrible had happened. I trembled out what happened. Someone blew in my ear. My hair, I saw it. It flew past my head. It. A smile cracked on his face and he started laughing at me. Payback for when I laughed at him the very first time. Except this time he was the one in denial and disbelief. He was like me. He didn't want to believe it. Life was already too scary and overwhelming. Why believe that? My dad followed and I immediately started lying to his horrified face. I tripped. Are you okay? Yes. Okay, finish getting the Halloween stuff out then. Yes, sir. I turned to my brother and threatened to hurt him if he didn't finish helping me. He didn't. I waited for my mother to get home and explain I wanted to do it with her, and I would help her set up the Halloween stuff. She was absolutely delighted. The next few years, I developed a habit of sleep aids. Nothing major, just over-the-counter stuff. To this day, I take about 3 sleep aid pills a night. My husband doesn't understand how my body has built up that kind of tolerance, and he doesn't believe it either. If only he knew. The footsteps never stopped. Till the day we moved out, they never stopped. I finally started doing research into the house. Turns out it was owned by an elderly couple before us, and the husband hung himself in the attic above my room. Financial problems, apparently. I told my parents. They didn't believe me. I never told my brother. I figured he wouldn't want to know. I still wonder if his nightmares ever stopped. Mine didn't, but they have just gotten more complex with age. Taxes, career, break-ins, car wrecks, plane crashes, ghosts of the past, you name it. We moved about a year later. I came home from university one day into our new home, my mother's dream home. She asked me to go back to Longford Drive. Our old mail was apparently over there. I drove up to the house. A shiver went down my spine. It started at the left ear. I had lived in a normal home for a few months now and hadn't realized how wrong Longford had felt. Something was really wrong with it. Did I let it in? With the pictures that night at the cemetery, had it always been there and I just hadn't noticed until my brother had his episode that morning? I don't know. I don't want to know still. Sometimes things are so frightening or traumatizing that you feel like you don't need to know. You don't want to face it. The world is scary enough. I walked to the front door of Longford Drive one last time and rang the doorbell. An older woman answered the door. I smiled and told her I was here for the mail. She jumped and went, "Oh yes, here." She handed me a bundle of letters, magazines, and what I assumed was mostly junk mail. As an adult now, I can confirm what it was mostly. I told her thank you and started to turn away. She stopped me. "Did you used to live in this house?" Yes ma'am, for many years." "Can I ask you a question?" "Yeah, sure." "Did you ever have problems with critters getting into the attic? We had someone come and check, but they said there was no sign of anything up there. It almost sounds like footsteps at night. My granddaughter comes to stay and keeps complaining that it sounds like footsteps in the attic. Does any of this sound familiar to you?" No ma'am, it doesn't." She wouldn't have believed me anyway. But this time, I need someone to believe me. So, I have lived on my own for about 2 years now. I have a very small bungalow. I'm able to pretty comfortably afford it. In this bungalow, I have an attic area. At a guess, I say it's about 5 by 5 meters in size, and you can only really stand in there in the very center. Anyway, I work the night shift at a factory. I basically just sit on my phone all night. So I usually get in at around 8 a.m. I was coming home last Thursday during a heavy storm, and I got into the house and just went to sleep. When I woke up, I went on my phone and saw that I was so tired that I didn't check my notifications. I have a Ring camera outside my door which shows me anyone who would have come to my room. I saw that it had been tripped at 7:42 a.m. I got into the house at around 8:10 to 8:15 a.m. I checked the video and saw that it was a man. He had pressed right up to the door and was fumbling around with the handle. He did this for about 10 seconds until he spotted the camera. Once he did, he very quickly scuttled away. This unsettled me, but didn't entirely creep me out or anything. I got up to go make some food and discovered something in my kitchen. My back window was open. I, of course, instantly began having the thoughts of a home intruder, but slowly chilled out as I convinced myself I had left it open. The rest of the day consisted of this, just noticing small things that didn't seem right and scaring myself. All up until a point. I leave for the shift at 10 p.m. and I was watching some TV at 9 o'clock-ish. I spotted something that made my heart leap into my throat. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see it. My attic entrance was slowly being slid open. I can so vividly remember that I began questioning my sanity. Surely I was just hallucinating or something. I look over at it and obviously saw something that made me so much more scared. I saw fingers wrap around the hatch and begin moving it more. I didn't know what to do. I could feel the panic beginning to really get to me, and I wasn't sure if I should leave the house and call the police, or if I should try and yell at whoever was up there. I chose a mixture of both. I began dialing 999 and ran to my bedroom where I could lock the door. As soon as I began running, I heard the hatch get almost tore off with the speed they had moved it, and I arrived at my bedroom door. I looked down the corridor and watched for a second, seeing only a little slice of the blackness up in the attic, and I saw the human hand still holding onto the sides of my ceiling. I yelled, "Whoever is there, I'm calling the police, and I have a gun." I do not own a gun. "If you take a step out of there, I will shoot you, you bastard." The adrenaline was really making my hands and voice shake, but I tried sounding as tough as I could. Then I saw something that I truly do not think I will ever forget. The hands slipped back into the dark, and then he dropped down. I slammed my door shut and locked it as quickly as I could. The call went through, and I was able to get on a line with the police, and they dispatched officers to my house. I told them I didn't know if the man was armed or not, and the dispatcher told me to stay on the line. I heard the man walking up to my door and rattling the door handle. He also seemingly went through my cupboards in my kitchen, as I heard a lot of commotion in there. Truth be told, I don't know why he stayed. I would have just left the house, but he stayed right up until the police came in and arrested him. Apparently, he was a homeless man and was armed with a knife from my kitchen and had recently been seen in the area trying to get into other houses. Truth be told, I'm very frightened to sleep still. I now sleep with my bedroom door locked and all my windows closed. I also sleep with a knife under my pillow. I know that this is unlikely to ever happen again, but I just cannot forget the way he dropped down from my attic. So that's the story of the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. In final words, if you have an attic, I think it would be wise that you check it at least once to twice a month. To be clear, since I was a child, I have lived in a house with 3 rooms and an attic. I have 1 brother and 2 sisters, so we had to share rooms. My sisters both got their own rooms on the 2nd floor, and me and my brother shared the attic. Our attic has a sloping roof. When I was younger, I always saw big round eyes under the sloping roof on the landing of the attic, similar to an owl when you can see its whole eyes. I used to think it were birds because I always watch on TV that birds had big round eyes. But now that I am older, I know that birds could not have come under the roof. There was also nothing electronic or anything at all. During the day, it seemed quite normal, and every evening I saw them again. Now, I recently had a conversation with my mother and grandmother about this, and they told me that not only I, but also my brother and sister saw it. My sister only can't remember it, and my brother partly. She also said that when we were little, she sometimes went to look when we told her this, but she could not see anything and didn't think anything more about it. Then suddenly, my grandmother told us that she always felt some kind of negative energy in the attic. So we went upstairs and I pointed out the exact spot. She then said that is the exact spot where she felt it and that it is still there. I had already forgotten a bit about it, but the other day I was gaming with some friends and we were talking about paranormal experiences. So I told them a bit about it, and suddenly I felt a kind of hand on my shoulder. It was already around 2 a.m. and nobody else was awake. Then I told my friends about the sudden touch, and they thought I was crazy. Has anyone had further experiences with this? And does anyone know what this could have been? And that, dear listeners, is the end of these attic and basement horror stories. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you kindly. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Until next time, I'll read to you soon. Have yourself a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good night.